I've seen the trends change in what corporate America has been asking for. And as they get into it, and as we sit down and listen and unpack, really what they're trying to be is they want an authenticity in their branding and who they're communicating to in the world. The number of times I get asked, like, can we just find ways to like loosen the tie, make these people feel approachable, real, confident, bold, and those are things as we get to play both creative but also art director in our roles. And so asking the right questions has always been a model of mine that the smartest people in my life have always modeled for me. If you ask the right question, you get the right content. If you get the right content, you know how to meet and exceed expectations as you go forward, and then you get feedback along the way.
Welcome back to Unlocked, a show about growing your business through the power of video. I'm Dan West, owner and creative director at Blue Key Media, and today I'm joined by my very good friend and award-winning photographer, Andrew Vick of Vick Studios. Thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Very kind, Dan. It's great to be here with you.
I know.
We get to collaborate together today?
One of many times that we get to collaborate.
Yeah, it's always a good time. Thanks for having me in.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in photography and what you do today.
Nice. Thanks, man. By the way, I need to say, it's an honor to be here. I'm a super fan of yours, and I have been for years. And so anytime that we get to team on any project, whether it be something like this or out in the field, it always brings out my best. So today, no pressure, but I think we got this today. As you know, I've been picked up the camera years ago. First photos I ever took were stringers of fish in the Boundary Waters and golf courses, and ran out to the beaches of San Diego. Surfers and friends getting into modeling agencies was my first work, and came back here. And 18 years later of doing this I think we could say it's a career. By the time you hit 18 years of
You're
the
not
field.
no part-time photographer.
Thank you. But it is. It's like when you get to do something you absolutely love for a living and get to keep the lights on at home and feed your family, it's a joy. So there's always pinch me moments, and the invite in doesn't go unrecognized. So thank you so much.
Well, one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring you in is because I think you're a fantastic storyteller, both in your photography, and I feel like in ways that other photographers just aren't able to capture, you're able to really capture that emotion. Some of the images I've seen, even just of like some of your personal stuff, like with your grandma and your kids, like it's really, I love the way that you tell stories through visuals, and we tell stories through video, and I feel, honestly, it's almost harder maybe to capture it in one frame rather we get 24 frames in multiple seconds. So tell me a little bit about like, how do you approach storytelling with the work that you do? And I mean, you've been doing it for what, almost 2 decades now?
Well, who's counting?
And how are you approaching stories and photography, and how are you keeping it fresh and authentic every single time?
That's good, man. I think in anything, it's a discipline, and you have to stay disciplined to who you are and making sure your heart is fueled. You mentioned my family and my grandma. She's passed in the last few months, and those images I have of her at the window during COVID greeting us from her home because we couldn't go in, it was something that I know that you picked out right away and just said, "Is this Photoshop?" And I said, "No, that's my lady. That's my lady." And the twinkle in her eye and the hardness of that moment and sitting in that pocket, it wasn't easy, but we were grateful and appreciative to being present in that. And so whether it be storytelling for clients, I feel like I have to bring it home and always be able to say, all right, it's a discipline to take the camera out to make sure that my story matters as much as sharing in other people's stories for that. And so, so much of like first 2 years of my kids' lives, I dedicated it to saying, no matter where we go, what we do, Dad's going to have his camera. Sometimes it feels like work. And sometimes it just feels like just complete outpour of love and emotion. And so within that, I also get to bring that same overflow into the work and other people's stories. And it is crazy to kind of do something that everyone has known as a hobby. And it is, you joke, but it is the number one question I get asked is like, is that full time? And, you get to pick the camera up day in and day out as well. And I know that you have similar parallels in that, but like really, like we get to do this. We get to find amazing people, amazing companies, amazing clients, and we get to listen at the table. We get to help unearth who they are, what their brand is trying to convey, and keep it authentic as we go forward. I mean, come on, like that's an incredible calling in the world.
Yeah. How do you go about the process of helping brands figure out their story? Because there's a lot of companies out there who maybe know what their product and service is and how they are differentiated, but not necessarily like, how do we communicate that visually? And what is our brand from a visual standpoint? Like, how do you go about helping your clients figure that out?
That's a good one. I've seen the trends change in what corporate America has been asking for. I think originally people get assigned a task from a marketing director to book a photographer, a videographer, and we need to have something short for our website, or we need to have new headshots. We have some new hires. And as they get into it, and as we sit down and listen and unpack, really what they're trying to be is they want an authenticity in their branding and who they're communicating to in the world. I think people are much more savvy today than ever before on what is fake and what is real. And the number of times I get asked, like, can we just find ways to like loosen the tie, make these people feel approachable, real, confident, bold, and those are things as we get to play both creative but also art director in our roles. And so asking the right questions has always been a model of mine that the smartest people in my life have always modeled for me in return. And it's just been like, do you ask the right question, you get the right content. If you get the right content, you know how to meet and exceed expectations as you go forward. And then you get feedback along the way.
Tell me a little bit about, and you can let me know if like you can't go into all the details, but you're the winery in Pepin, and like, what was the process like?
Day,
I mean,
it was a good day.
Those photos were really great, and it's a family vineyard, if I remember right. And so, like, how did you go about figuring out what's the story that you're looking to tell, and then how'd you end up bringing that to life?
Yeah, it's good. The winery is available as a winery. Plug. It is my favorite whisk away and my favorite drive in the United States. Well, I'll say at least in the Midwest. Yeah. And as you head down the shores of Pepin, like I remember my first experience as a client stepping into this space. And I have been back a handful of times with my family. I photographed one of their family's weddings. And so it's like visiting a family friend at this point in time. And they approached me and said, we'd love to have new images of the vineyard, but specifically we're bringing on a new winemaker. And it's aggressive for Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's a young female winemaker. And we want to elevate her as an expert in this. And I want to show her in the field doing what the owner has previously done. And so as we start talking about the layers and the process of that passing of the baton and the sharing of wisdom, it was really important for us to show the originator with the apprentice and the teaching aspect of that. And so in my experience in sampling wines, I know that there's lots that goes into that. I've learned actually more about my business and how a vineyard portrays their product because everything is very intentional. How the grapes are grown, the timing of things. There's food, there's craft, there's art within it. And so we started flying drones to get the aerials of the impact of the valley because the space showing up to it, it's incredible. It looks like you're in Italy. But what makes it special is you pull back and you can get the bluffs and you get people's impression as they're coming in on the rolling roads all the way, and then they show up at the gate. So how do you get from far back, the anticipation, to the gates opening and then the hospitality side of it. And as we got into the hospitality, they crushed that out of the park within their wedding and event side, and they have plenty of images within that. The part that I was excited to show was, how do we make this? What science goes into this? And again, teacher apprentice in the back room, it wasn't glamorous at times, but we have beakers out where they're pouring different varietals and saying, you got to try this. No, you got to try this, like a food tasting table would. Yeah. And we would continue to go forth with the lab mixing, the process of making it, and how does it get into the bottle for it. And as we started unpacking their story, we realized quickly there was much more to tell.
Yeah. Well, what I think is really great about, I guess, the angle you took there is from a vineyard standpoint, like the product's the wine. It's easy to focus on the grapes, the product is the grapes, and ultimately what becomes wine. But like, it's easy to focus on that, and you can put grapes all over your website and what have you. But the fact that you focused in on the story of the people involved in the making, and you talked about the intentionality throughout the process and focusing on those elements. And I mean, just the way you just told the story now of like starting out with the drone and then coming in, and I feel like people aren't always thinking that way when it comes to like the visual side of storytelling and coming up with, okay, what are the right visuals? And it starts with the story we're trying to tell. Yep. And the intention behind that.
Totally. If you don't mind, it's a great transition into, like, on the weekends, occasionally I get asked to do a wedding, wedding photography. And one of my favorite moments of the whole wedding is the ceremony, and partly is because of perspective. And the memory of the bride and groom is very important on that day, and that's what they recall. But I always encourage people that be prepared, because the collection you're going to get is other people's perspectives. And I'm going to try to get inside of everyone's head, experiencing and witnessing this big moment right now. And so whether it be getting on my hands and knees right behind the ear of the flower girl and her perspective up at the bride, whether it be the best man's perspective at the bride looking at his best buddy, whether it be a family member in that front row wiping away a tear and engaging in that from that vantage point, whether it be the squirrel on the fence post in the very far back, or an auntie on the far side holding up her iPad, taking it all in. The collection I want to be able to give them isn't just their memory and how you know your product to be and what you're remembering, but I want to be able to say, who else is absorbing this? Who else is out there taking this in? Who else has memory that we should be noting and being able to represent that well in the images as they go forward? So
yeah, that's really great. It makes me think one of the other projects that I know well, because I just love the images that came out of it, was the Interlochen Club. Yeah. And like, I felt like exactly what you just described was with the images that were coming out of that, and like getting into the perspective of the members. And so I think that is just such a smart way to think about it, because we can get like so focused in on just what we know, and it's all about our product and our company, but bringing in the other perspective can be really engaging and intriguing and interesting.
No, the Interlochen Country Club project was a very special one for me. It was quite a few years in the making. Usually the call would be, we have a new hire, we need some new headshots. Okay. The next call became, we should get some fresh images on our website. We have a brochure, we should probably get that out, but our deadline's this. So everything was a bit reactionary as they were trying to convey what the next season's product was. And finally we said, let's just sit down and talk about first of all, who is Interlochen right now? Who are you and who are you becoming? And what story do you want to tell? Is it everyone's experience at the club? Because guess what? You not just have golf, you also have food. You have an incredible restaurant that you just unraveled. You also have racquetball. You have a swimming pool. And so when people go, I love the club, do they love the daycare facility at the club? What is it about the club that they love the most? And so we started with asking questions of like, what is important? Why do we sign up for a membership each and every year? Yeah. And we started realizing that there's more to the club than just golf. And all over the website, was predominantly this prestigious golf course. And as we started talking, we realized there's young families joining the club. We'd love to push more into the family-centric side of it. We're going to be opening up an athletic facility to help train simulators, coaches. And so this whole like holistic sport and life, much like you've seen with fitness clubs around, they're kind of taking a bit of that model. And so as we started inviting people to the table to be our models and to showcase, they identify, say, you know what, this family, the Johnson family, we really value you at the club. We'd love to give you a beautiful dinner. Would you mind showcasing your family and doing some photos with us? And they were more than happy to oblige. And so we got to tell the story of diversity. We got to tell the story of a retiree sitting in the Adirondacks who can't swing the golf club anymore, but watch his grandkids come off the green. We got to show kids jumping in the pool with their babysitter and saying, I love coming to the club because of this bond and this interaction. And we told it from the air. We told it from the kids' perspective. We told it from underwater.
Yeah.
And you saw some of those underwater images with the bubbles coming out of the girl's nose. Still some of my favorite images today. So thanks for highlighting that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So all of this is awesome, talking about the visual storytelling that we can do. But I think a lot of people maybe think about photo, video, and sometimes it can be a little bit of an afterthought, or maybe hesitation of, do I really want to like invest in this? Is it something that's going to add lots of value? I mean, what do you say to your clients as you're talking about the value that visual story, whether it's photo or video or a different medium, can bring to branding and marketing and selling their products or service?
If it's not too forward, I kind of view us as brand ambassadors. And who is in your family? Who is in your camp? And for us, we have a way of listening, documenting, getting feedback, and then recording in our systems. This is your look, this is your brand, this is how you want to portray. And so we have over 350 presets that we have built for specific brands on just the edit, because one edit can be really high contrast and punchy. The other can be really flat and much more like what you're seeing in restaurants and food. And so the edit is an extension of it. I think the capture is one, the extension is the other. And so the part that I've seen a lot of corporate work move towards has been in this movement of style shoots, moving into like, will you carry our brand forward, and understanding who you're marketing it to and who it's going out to, but also like, who are you emulating? Because true art is copy. Like the best flattery of any art is a bit of a copycat.
Yeah.
And so I love, and I call it an inspiration board, but if you're going to flag some images and show us like who you're inspired by, wow, is it the emotion? Is it the movement in the image, or is it in the edit? And so we can dissect those different pieces of the photography product going forward for it. And it has been fun. I've seen a big movement coming from a little bit of the West Coast energy of bright sun, bright daylight. You see it in ads and showing up. You're seeing more and more people saying, great, I don't just want a clean headshot, because I don't always like, no one loves their photo being taken, Dan. Like at the end of the day, like it is right up there with public speaking or maybe podcasts. I'm showing up and this is my best self today. And so can you just make this as painless as possible? It's similar to a doctor. But what do? You trust your experts. And I trust my doctor. I trust my bookkeeper. There's certain people that carry your brand and carry who you are and the safety of what you're trying to be in the world. And I think storytelling is a portion of that for companies. And I'm seeing them trust the experts like us more and more as we produce and create with them.
Yeah. How do you see, what's the value in like investing in both photo and video together, and the overlap between photo and video?
Man, you and I know synergy is it's really important. And when you find your fit and you find your people and who you want to work with, it's combustible energy and joy. The magic that you get to create, whether it be with another creative or just a client fit is everything. And the beauty in it is usually there's a way to be able to set out as one as the main art director. And then there's one voice going forward and central to storytelling for that. And there's a lot of conversations we've had behind the scenes to come up with what we're trying to convey about a product or a client and to be able to hit the end result. And I love it that the pressure's on the line because you get one really good shot at it. And to see people's eyes widen and jaws drop and say, I never thought we could look that great, or I had never thought like it could be as good, or you could elevate our game as much as you have. Like the feedback, right? I mean, I'm going to ask you the question. I'm not supposed to at a podcast, but like, what's one of your best like feedback moments or things that you love about delivering that video and then like sitting back and waiting? What's that anticipation like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess our favorite thing is just hearing people talking about how the video captured their story in a way that they never thought they'd be able to do in like 2 minutes. And being, especially when we work in the nonprofit side, like telling the stories of the patients or the clients or whoever that that nonprofit's impacting, and just like, you know, being able to share their stories and deliver it. So it's my favorite part when we always hear about just like how floored they are that the video is able to capture that emotion and the mission in ways that a paragraph on a website could never do.
Never do. Yeah. And that's what makes you passionate about it. And if it doesn't live in you and doesn't wake you up at night and you don't lose sleep over it, you should be doing something else with your life within that. But that's always what I've always admired about your work and your care. And no two clients are the same.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And if one thing that we've learned in our time working together is like, how do we understand the client's heart? And really, we are collaborative artists. We are commission artists. They're committing resources to a product they haven't even seen, and they're trusting that we're going to knock it out, and we're going to care deeply about that. Yeah. And I love that pressure, and I know that there's wonderful pressure that you guys feel on the video side as well. But like to be able to say, "You got us, you understood us, and we can't wait for more." Come on. That's great.
And to your point of like, there's a lot of trust that goes into trusting
100%.
Video partner, photographer, because you're right, investments made before they ever are able to see like what is coming to life. And I think that's something that you and I do well is the intentionality that goes into everything beforehand of figuring out what is that story we're telling it, and really getting to know the client intimately and understand like what are we trying to accomplish here, because you're right, it is a lot of trust to put into somebody 100%. on a creative element like this.
Dan, you and I are both married. It's no different than our marriages. To separate amazing women. And in that, defining expectation is everything. And how do you meet and exceed those along the way? So we've developed steps personally, but our client relationships are no different. It's like starting simple, coming in, you know, everybody's, you know, maybe have never done it before. So how do you walk people through the stages of trusting someone with their baby or their brand or their product, and asking simple questions and moving into more complex? And as you do, you gauge and you define expectations as you go along the way, so we both know how to meet and exceed them as we go forward. So
tell me, are there any other trends that you're seeing in the photo or video world, just the visual storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing more and more companies not afraid to take you on site, on scene, wherever their mission is going. One of my company contracts I get to work with is Medtronic, and they have in-house photo and they have in-house video. And they brought me on board because they said they wanted to capture who Earl Bakken's heart is before he passes. And, you know, we lost a great Earl Bakken just a few years ago, and he became a father figure to me. But his heart was wanting to look patients in the eye and say, now that you've been given this extra life, what are you going to do with it? You have this pacemaker, you have this insulin pump. I know I created the device, but now that you have this device, what are you going to do with it going forward? And I'd be remiss not to like share that Earlism today because it's been something I've kept with me for a really long time. But in our project, we got to go out to Hawaii where he was living. We flew patients out who had the device and their caregivers as well. And what I was really impressed with as we started talking about the vision for this project was not only the person with the device and the success that they're living from, but who's keeping them alive. And so we set aside one night just to celebrate the caregivers who help clean their trays, help feed when they need to feed, help clean out the pumps when they need to be pumped. And we didn't tell them. It was like a surprise party. They thought it was going to be for the patients, and instead it got flipped on its head, and it was for the caregivers that give them so much life. The emotion, the documenting of the event, the portraiture that we got of this team was some of the most powerful stuff we've ever been able to document in our time with Medtronic for that going forward. And so I've seen that trend continue, whether it be on-site photo shoots or changing up an environment. This might be your office, but you might want to freshen up and do an on-site at a restaurant and pairing with another great brand that you want to align with. And so it's team building activities, showcasing that you're real people enjoying real life outside of your offices. And in that, grabbing some lifestyle portraiture of people, teams interacting and laughing. No one's ever said that there was too much joy on their website. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
And so I've actually really appreciated that movement into the human interaction authenticity of that.
That's great. Before we wrap things up, do you have any tips for people who are thinking about getting into or like doing photography for their business, or even, on a broader level, if they're looking at doing visual storytelling, whether it's photo or video, like any tips for people as they're getting started or going into it?
Yeah, absolutely. One tip I have for a business as they're stepping into this phase, I got to appreciate it working with you actually to help bring out another dimension to what I've done. The things we know we're experts in and we're best at, and I'm learning to trust my professionals as I go forward in it. I know how to run a business. I know how to take care of my clients. And I also know like the photos I take matter to the client I'm producing for, but how do we convey that to others looking for something similar? And so you brought to my attention the value of what about another dimension of who you are? Because in looking at who you are, Andrew, I love your pictures. I've seen you behind the camera a couple times, but what would it be like to put a mic on you and to get to share a little bit of the passion that you have for it? And adding that extra dimension to my brand and to who I am trying to be has challenged me in a beautiful way. I think everything is a little scary at first, but I got to trust you, much like my clients trust me for the first time. And it was something new that I got to step into. And I've just been thrilled at the product. And we're about to like launch it live next week. And I'm pumped for the response. Anybody I've shown it to has really said, why didn't you do this sooner? And I feel like my clients come to me after we're done with photographs. They've done some work on their iPhones. They might have just documented a team group huddle. But if they want to really elevate their professionalism and what they're trying to portray, bringing along someone who cares, someone who will listen, and trusting them with their brand. And if that's me, if that's you, the specialists know. If you have a hand injury, you're not going to go to a general doc. Yeah. You're going to go to someone who specializes in what the attendants are going on within the hand. And I think the same within this line of saying, great, we want to do visual storytelling well. Let's bring in a professional and no regrets.
Yeah, that's great. And one other thing from what you just said, I think that's important to remember too is look for the unique angle. You were saying that with the videos that we were doing, which are where you're sharing information on topics like FAQ, like that wasn't an angle you had necessarily considered.
Absolutely never.
And just like we were talking about in some of the other photography projects you were doing, unique perspectives of, what the flower girl's seeing if it's in a wedding, or from the perspective of the grapes looking up at the winemaker. Thinking how, when you are doing your visual storytelling, how do you get into those unique perspectives that place your audience, whoever's on your website or interacting with it, in a new frame of mind or in a unique mindset.
Absolutely. And I think looking outside of your industry is really important in that. We can just rinse and repeat what financial planning world does. But what about construction? What about realtors? What are other industries doing in storytelling
Yeah.
that you've never considered?
Yeah, that's great.
And how do you pull more of that in? I learned more, again, I learned more about my business from going to a winery than talking to my colleagues about how to grow my business. And it's like, how intentional are they being in their product and the creation, the storytelling, and the meaning? And so whatever lane people are in, the more we can broaden that scope. And for us, we get to see lots of different ways people are telling stories. And so by bringing us in or bringing me in or bringing you in, we've been through that with many different companies and many different facets. And so there's always an inspiration conversation to be had.
Yeah.
And we can't wait for more.
That is so good. Talking about pulling inspiration from other
100%.
places, because it's easy to look at your competitors, but you can gain so much inspiration from adjacent industries or other companies that have absolutely nothing to do with what you're doing, and you can find some really beautiful things from that.
Especially on social. And innovators are what's coming to the forefront, coming out of COVID and all these times that we've had of like isolating and just staring at what we know to be true. And really the innovators are what are setting the bar and pushing the gas to go further.
That's great. Well, Andrew, I really appreciate you joining me on
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, likewise. And where can people find your work and get in touch with you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Our website is vickstudios.com for our corporate brand, and vickphotography.com. It's V as in Victor, ICK, photography.com.
Like the football player.
Thank you. Or Vaporub. And I'm always happy to dream with people. It's just first conversation is always just a joy to be able to share. And if people want to move further in that, we can talk about a game plan and purpose. Instead of being reactionary, let's be proactive with it, and would love to create and dream with you together. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, man.
And for all of our listeners out there, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions about this podcast or have questions about video, you can feel free to reach out to us at our website, bluekeymedia.com. And if you're not following us on social, make sure to follow us on social at Blue Key Media, where you can keep up to date on these episodes and other content that we're putting out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Andrew. And we'll see everybody else next time on the next episode.
Can't wait.